Yeah, that's getting there.
Just making sure.
So we're even ahead of 5 o'clock. Go on.
We are live. If you'd like to start the meeting.
Okay, then I call us to order at 4:59 PM, and I will start with the land acknowledgement. The Altadena Library District acknowledges its presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples. Altadena is located on the stolen homeland of the Hahamanga tribal band. The traditional territory of the Gabrielino Tongva is referred to as Tabongar, which includes the areas currently known as Los Angeles County, Riverside County, West San Bernardino County, parts of Orange County, as well as the 4 Southern Channel Islands. Entities such as the U.S. government and non-native settlers have subjected the Gabrielino Tongva peoples to historic and continuing injustices, including genocide, forced displacement, and cultural and linguistic erasure. Altadena Library commits to learning, educating, and informing its staff and residents of present-day Altadena about the rich histories, vibrant communities, and culture of the Gabrielino Tongva people, present and past, through our collection development, resources, and program offerings. Okay, we will do a roll call. Trustee Clark?
Here.
Trustee Capel? And I am here. Are there any items that need to be added to the closed session agenda? I guess there needs to be no reordering of the closed session agenda, so can I get a motion to adopt the closed session agenda?
So moved.
I'll second, I guess.
All in favor? Okay. Is there any closed session public comment?
There is none.
Okay, then, can we get a motion to convene to closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the Board of Trustees will recess into closed session pursuant to the Ralph M. Brown Act for the purposes of discussing or taking action on our item, public employee performance evaluation at 5:01 PM. Okay, all right, we are reconvening back into open session at 5:59 PM. And we will move on to our, oh, there are no actions to report from closed session. Okay. So we'll move on to our agenda. Are there any, reordering of our agenda items as it is?
Nope.
Nope. Okay, can I get a motion to adopt our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We are all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Is there any public comment on non-agenda items?
I have no public comment.
Excellent. All right, so we're moving to our consent calendar. Can I get a motion, or is there anything that needs to be removed or modified in the consent calendar? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar as it is?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. All right, so we will move on to department updates and special presentation. I believe we have a wonderful special presentation on the PLA conference from Ohio. Who is gonna be giving a presentation? All of you?
Yeah, I thought we could all just say a few
Talk about it?
words, yeah. So I'll start out by saying that, thank you to the board again for providing professional development, funding and opportunities for all of us. I did go to PLA in Portland 2 years ago, as did Jason, I think. And even then, it didn't really feel like a conference still. So this was like the first time I'm like, oh my gosh, we're back. It was really great, like lots of people there. The four of us, of the picture that you see in the board package, we're waiting to take this photo outside of the exhibit hall, and the crowd of people walking into the exhibit hall for the opening, it was like insane how many people were there this time. Lots of good programs, and a lot of variety to select from, which I thought was great. Appreciated that we started a chat group, so we weren't duplicating most of the time, what we were going to. But my highlight, as you can see, was, being able to tour some of the libraries in Columbus,
Mhm.
especially in light of the fact that they were all pretty new construction projects, one of which is opening on the 24th of this month. That was good to like get my juices flowing around like furniture and finishes and other things. I will say all of the bathrooms were really boring, so that disappointed me. I like a good bathroom, to be honest.
Yeah.
So like, that's definitely something I pointed out to Mark, recently, our architect. But again, overall, never been to Columbus. It was cool to see. Not a lot to do there, to be honest with you. But I thought it was a great conference.
Cool, thank you.
Can I do it from my feet or mic?
Probably the mic.
Can I?
Yeah.
Okay. Tricky things. Okay. All right. Good evening. So like Nikki, I enjoyed attending the conference as well. It was my first time going in 8 years, I want to say. So it's been a while, but it was a really exciting opportunity. I thought it was great to include like my itinerary for each day because every day was jam-packed with a lot of opportunities for me to either attend a program, network, or meet new people and things like that. I think the highlight would be the networking. I got to meet a lot of really great people, and not just in California, but like all across the nation. I even got to sit on the airplane next to some library folks, and it was just really cool to meet new people. And also, I attended the PLA President's Program, and she is African American, so she had a panel of African American like directors and like people that held big titles in libraries. And you really don't see that a lot. You don't walk into the average library and that's who you see at the top of the food chain, if I could say that for lack of a better phrase. But it was really good to connect with them because so many people of color attended that session and like were looking up to them, and they were just encouraging them to keep going. Like the statistics are 88% white of the profession. But we can change that, and they just talked about the importance of the next generation walking into a library and seeing people that look like them and not just cleaning the library, but running the library. So it just really inspired me to use the opportunity that the seat that I hold for good. So I did join Bacala. So again, to echo Nikki's comments, thanks for providing funds to do that, because not only did I join, but I'm gonna go to their conference this year instead of doing ALA. And it just means a lot to me to be able to participate in something like that. And like I said, to use my voice to help the next generation come up. And then also in that session, I had met an African-American librarian that I had hired, and she was crying because of what she is experiencing in the library system that she works in. And it just made me really grateful for the community I get to work in, where I just don't experience those types of things. So really humbling yet grateful experience. And then I would say another big highlight for me was volunteering at the Career Center. It's something I've been trying to do. I did it at CLA last year, I think it was, and it just is nice to work with people and like mentor people, pretend to interview them. I think a lot of people struggle with that, or they don't get jobs and no one really connects with them after to say, hey, this is what you could have done better. This is where you struggled. And it was just really good to work with people that are coming up in the library profession. And I would say my third highlight, believe it or not, was getting to eat lunch with the trustees and Nikki. I don't think we really get to spend much time outside of like this meeting here. So it was nice just to sit with you all for a few minutes, and I don't even remember what we talked about, but the company and the food was good, so sometimes that's what we need. So overall, wonderful, wonderful experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Ashley, do you recall what the Bacala stands for?
Yes, it's the Black Caucus of the American Library Association.
Oh, nice.
You wanna go?
Sure.
You're next in the report, so.
Yeah, I mean, my report's pretty detailed. I think the two things, I think number one, anytime you go to these conferences, it's always amazing to see how much of the agenda, where the whole industry, if you will, is just starting to think about certain things that like we're already practiced in. Right, so you have like these entire panels based upon, EDI programs and diversity audits and dealing with book bans and like all this stuff that we either don't have to deal with because Altadena is awesome, or like we've already been thinking about it and like figuring it out like on our, like just by ourselves in our tiny little district here. So that's always amazing to see that we're always ahead of the curve. And then also, part of the reason I wanted to go this year is when I saw the agenda and just there's like a bunch of pieces that I thought would be really helpful to be thinking about, as we kind of are really like the building projects are real now, right? And definitely came away with some of that, just how to kind of think differently about all aspects like programming and collection and everything, as the building project starts to become real. So yeah, very, very helpful to be attending for sure.
Yeah, I second all of that. I think for me, there were sort of two really interesting things. One was to see, all the constraints that folks at a lot of other systems are working with them, which really gave me an appreciation for how, even though we're trying to do a lot of complicated things that are quite challenging, we're doing them without that architecture constraint, whether it's a lack of funding or a lack of, support from the city council or a lack of support from the community. So that was pretty wild. I'm not gonna go through all the stuff I put in my report, but I'll just say, I think that speaking with a bunch of, you know, really smart, like committed public librarians from across the country, it was also really interesting to have the same conversation with so many of them, where they were like, well, what do you do? And I was like, I'm a trustee. And they're like, I have no idea what the board does. And it felt like the conversations that we have here all the time. And even for people who work in libraries, I think that there's no understanding of what sort of the governance piece looks like, what the policy piece looks like. So it was just a good reminder to me that there's always a lot more to do, I think, on that front, in educating folks about how the board works, vis-a-vis the system, you know. So I don't know exactly what that looks like, but it's definitely, it was a good reminder that that's a kind of a universal challenge everywhere. But it was great, and it was great to see what conversations are happening sort of in library land and where we are vis-a-vis those conversations, and we feel really good about what we're doing.
I appreciate the detailed reports that you all did. It was fun to review and have a little FOMO. It looked fun.
It was fun.
Yeah, thank you for that. All right, so department update reports, are there any questions or comments that you all have on the reports that the staff submitted?
I mean, the main thing is just continuing to see like the real drive towards building partnerships, right? Even outside the official boundaries of Altadena, right? Because there is so much overlap. So that's just really cool to see, especially with the different schools and organizations that you all are building with. Is pretty fun.
I appreciated the teens take up space display. I love that as a concept. And I'm hoping that, yeah, obviously as we go in our building project, we can make that really literal and, you know, involve them in some of the design questions around the teen space. But I was like, yeah, more of that to come. Like, there was a conversation that came up at PLA. It was about the way that one branch library in Columbus had brought like their actual teen patrons in
Yeah,
to help design the space that they were gonna be in. And I think that's cool, so.
it is. That's
Yeah.
a really good point. I saw in your, I mean, something in your report that you're gonna be doing the focus groups. And so I think right, the community focus group. So would it be, I read something about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna keep, the community focus group is sort of like a separate container basically for people to give input, but I think something very similar to
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
With the teen patrons would be really cool.
Yeah, I
To hear what they
agree.
want.
I agree. Good. Thank you. That also reminds me, going back a little bit, Nikki, is it not common to go, when you've gone to these conferences before, to go and visit the libraries in the location? Or do the host cities or whatever invite people like in library leadership to come and visit the libraries?
Yeah, I feel like sometimes they'll like schedule a tour of some kind that like people can sign up for formally. I do think people oftentimes do visit the libraries, but a lot of the conferences I've been to, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
I think it's like if you know someone that works for the system or the director. Fortunately, my friend, she's the director in Richland County. She wanted to get out and she's good friends with Pat, who's the director there. So line that up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but not really.
Yeah, I think I mean, it might be hard in terms of like having so many people over on the library, but thinking about what, Katie was sharing in terms of having the teams come, it might be nice to have like a little session where they host, not just everyone attending, but maybe like the library leadership, so that it reduces the numbers. Anyway, it was just a thought that I had as I was reading that report, that was a cool opportunity.
For sure.
For you.
Yeah, and I'm planning to connect our team librarian with our interior designer. That's on my to-do list right now, to get that ball rolling, because Finn has a TLC, Teen Leadership Council. That's typically who you pull in, and maybe they can get a couple of their friends to come and you meet with them a few times to help set up the space, but also like with other decision-making related to the building, you know, and what they're really looking for. Yeah, because that space that I looked at that building that's about to open, like the teens were involved 100%. So I would love to see something like that happen.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, then we can move on to reports, and we start with the support groups. First, the Altadena Library Foundation. Is there anyone present? Okay, then we'll move on to the Friends. I saw a report in the packet. Is there anyone present for that? Okay, any questions? All right.
I'll just point out that the Friends are doing their big sale on May. What date it is actually?
I think it's in,
It's like the third and the
The 18th?
That sounds right.
18th and 19th.
Yes.
The 18th,
and 19th.
18th and 19th. We'll be putting up a banner soon, I'm sure. We just gotta change the dates, but I'm sure that's what he would want to point out. They also have their annual membership meeting. That'll be their June meeting, which takes place, June board meeting, basically. That'll be on Tuesday, June 4th. Is that right, Ashley?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and that'll be at, I believe, 6 o'clock here at the main library.
Yes.
And one of the Friends supported programs, which is our Poets Laureate, that's also supported by our Altadena Library Foundation. Just a reminder, their final poetry and cookies event is this Saturday here at the main library at 11 a.m. They did announce their 2 selected poets. I saw one of them was at the groundbreaking last week. So I'm sure they'll be there as well, but this will be part of the final program. And the anthology that they printed has, I can't even remember, 135 poets contributing. Yeah, so a lot of them will be here. It's gonna be a very well-attended program, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, thank you. We'll move on to administrative updates.
I'll try to be quick. I know our closed session went for a while, but in terms of our staffing update, we did accept the sad, bittersweet news that our library assistant, Nal Dama, who'd been with the district 7.5 years, resigned her position. Last day with us was April 5th. Mel's been getting her MLIS, or Master's in Library and Information Science, for the past few years. So I believe this is her plan is to look for a librarian position somewhere and finish out her program strong. As I'm sure you're aware, she was very involved with art curation, art programming. She helped organize the community quilt hanging on the wall happening, as well as our work with our first ever artist in residence, Linda. So she's definitely going to be missed, but we wish her well in her future pursuits. We did decide that it was an essential position to fill, so we posted that job about a month ago, something like that. And we've received over 60 applicants. So yeah, I feel like we're back in the time of normal hiring again. So Ashley and Adult Services Manager Danielle will be there's going to be an external panel. Hopefully we'll be selecting people soon to get started. And lastly, I'll update on facilities manager position, which has been vacant, as you know. We posted it again after the first round didn't result in selecting anyone. I promoted it on LinkedIn. So like as a tactic that seemed to work really well. I had over 55 applicants come in through LinkedIn, and like more quality looking ones than the last time around. So we did an initial screening of the top candidates, and we'll be doing our final round of interviews next week. So fingers crossed, I will be sharing the news of who's been selected at our meeting in May. Real briefly, I mentioned a staffing assessment. Ashley, David, and I met with our HR consultant, Patty Francisco, to talk about what staffing levels would look like next year with or without an alternate site, just so that we're prepared in terms of like how many staff we would have at each one, what that looks like, as we prepare for the main library closure. So we'll continue having conversations with her to make sure that we feel ready to go next year, when we're hopefully closing Main in about a year from now, so. Marketing update, as you can see, Bryn has been very, very busy. Especially in promoting the closure of the Bob Lucas Library. We wanted to make sure the community was aware of that, as well as, the amazing video she produced about the history of the library and Bob Lucas. And then again, released another video about the groundbreaking and the project itself, just, in our effort to try to keep everybody as informed as possible about that closure. I believe after we published this, like, how many thousand was it up to? Like 10,000 views?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
Like the videos are getting a lot of viewing, which is really great. And someone walked up to her at the groundbreaking and like had said like, I don't know who made those videos, but they're awesome. And so like people they've been very well received. We're also putting an article in the June issue of Altadena Neighbors about the Bob Lucas project. So again, another way to spread the word. And then right now she is very, very busy working on the Cool magazine that we put out last year for summer reading program. Doing the same thing this year. So excited to see that. But yeah, I think there's over 100 programs or something. It's a lot. So that'll be coming out soon. Let's see, we already talked about Kia. National Library Week, was about 2 weeks ago now. We offered some really great programming related to that. I was fortunate to have our architect, Mark Schumann, come out on the Friday, I think that was the 12th. We had a building biographer, Tim Gregory, come and talk about the history of the building, history of Boyd Georgie architecture and mid-century modern. And then Mark and I talked to the group about what the changes that are coming look like and how we're maintaining the historical integrity. And it was a pretty well-attended program. So like, great. Unfortunately, they were gonna do a walk of the Millionaire's Row, start here and go. And the next day, but it was raining. So they rescheduled it and did it this past Saturday. So thanks to the staff for putting all that together. Let's see. One of the last Poets Laureate program was the conclusion of their Ode to the Land series of programming, which again brought together teens as well as older members of the community to collaborate. Ashley was able to attend that, thankfully, on April 7th. It was held up at Zorthian Ranch, which I heard was a little bit of an adventure to get there. So she was able to give opening remarks and thank Carla and Peter again for the work that they've done. David also went and handled the tech. So thank you to them both. That was a Sunday afternoon. And they did at that point reveal the 2 Poets Laureate. So we'll make sure, I don't think we put their names in here. We'll make sure they're in the next update from us. Ashley continues, as you know, to serve on the Altadena Chamber of Commerce Board, which is offering monthly webinars. So I encourage you to check out their website to see which topics are being covered. And I have a couple other committees that I mentioned in here, but I think that's enough. Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Team?
No.
No?
Let's see.
Okay. Thank you for that, Nikki. All right, shall we move on to financial reports? Do we have? Hello there.
Hi, good evening, everyone, trustees, staff, guests. Yes, we'll do a brief financial report tonight. We are through 75% of the way through the year. And on page 48, Nikki has a nice summary in her staff report, but I will touch on just a few highlights, a few things that have changed this quarter. Revenues are at 95%, and that again is primarily due to the property taxes coming in early during the year. The only line that is really under is our other revenue, And we're still waiting for a reimbursement on some of the data communications internet rebates. So that should still come in by year end. I expect that in the last couple of months, we'll see a few additions to property taxes as well. So we should be going over our revenue budget just a little bit. Salaries and benefits is over slightly, and that's due to some vacation payouts that were made. And when the director left, there was some vacation payout. So that line should even out by year end. It's over just a little bit right now. The total salaries and, I'm sorry.
I was
I was like, uh-oh,
I'm like.
that closed session really left us. stuck.
I know. Like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Total salaries and benefits in total is at 75%, but those were just a couple of the lines that were under. Line 21, I think now that we've only got a couple months left to meet for the end of the fiscal year, we need to have a discussion, perhaps put that as an agenda item for next meeting to decide if you want to send any money to CalPERS, or as Nikki has suggested, set up a sub-account within class investments and call that your UAL, and start building funds there that are restricted to pay down that liability. So I think we'll come with a recommendation and that for the board so that they can have a discussion on that next meeting. Operating costs are over slightly, mostly due to insurance and a few things that are paid in advance. I will note the change this time with miscellaneous expenses is over. There were some data communication, some technology maintenance, some things in FY23, the prior fiscal year, that we had intended to be paid for by a grant. And David and I worked through that quite a bit and determined after working with the granting agency that they were not going to fund that. They had discontinued their program and it was something we thought would be renewed. So that was a little over $9,000 that the general fund did cover this year that had not been budgeted, but we'll make up with that, make up that difference in, I think, our additional revenue. So it should not hurt the bottom line. Professional services are a little bit under to date, and that's primarily due to HR consulting, not as many expenses as anticipated to date on that. And then the audit line is under a little bit. I think we budgeted expecting that every expense would be general fund. And to date, we've been able to cover some things from the grant and others from the CFD administration. So that line should end just a little bit under. Technology, a little bit under, and primarily due to the fact that the internet services is way behind in billing. I think we finally got one through mid-year, so that will catch up at year end, and we should be a little closer to budget there. Library materials is again under budget, and that has to do with the mobile library collection. So I think that's something Ashley and I will get together. I don't know if these are items that haven't been purchased yet or if we need to reclass some items, but I know materials, a lot of the time we don't see these lines funded until closer to year end. Programming is under a little bit as well, and that has to do with timing primarily. And then I think we'll have a few literary services. That line doesn't have any expenses yet, and we have some of those that we need to record before year end. The building projects, legal fees, I think I mentioned this last meeting, is well over. The bills came in much higher than we'd anticipated. This was something that the committee and the board approved, paying for some capital legal expenses out of general fund. You'll see when we present the budget next meeting that the recommendation is not to do that next meeting. We did this year to keep the capital budget on schedule. I think that's why the board approved doing this. But instead, what you'll see next year is a budget line for legal expenses in your capital projects budget. Projections are that budget is that $100,000 will be added to your reserve. To date, it's close to $1 million. And again, we've got 3 months left to spend those funds. So we should come in pretty close to the $100,000 mark. Any questions on your general fund expenses or revenues and expenses, excuse me? Okay, then I'll move on to donations and grants. Great picture here. And let's see, we're on page 51 for donations and grants. Revenue is in total at 96%, but you can see most lines are at 100 or greater, meaning The district received even more revenue than it anticipated. The only line that's under is lunch at the library. And I think we learned midway through that funding will cross 2 fiscal years. So you'll probably see at year end, we'll defer a little bit of that and you'll see the revenue come in next year. Expenses are right on or above. Wages are just a little bit above. Operating expenses are above, and that has to do with the vending machine and the van and most of that being spent out. The rest of those lines you'll see continue through year end. Total programs and materials, some of the lines have been spent in total. Some of the events that we mentioned that have already occurred. And then the other lines, it's a matter of timing. Those expenses should come in at year end. We do, the district, its priority is to spend all of the donation and grant funds each year. So you'll see those lines zero at the end of the year. We'll work really hard to make sure that every dime that was donated is spent. Any questions on donations and grants? Okay, I added a page this time that's a combined summary, and we can decide if this is helpful, if we want anything added to it. It's nice because it includes general fund and donations and grants. What it doesn't include, I played with putting in capital, but then I realized at this point in time, everything that's capital is just capital. The only line shared with that is legal. So I decided it was better to really get the picture of operations. Your routine operations are at about $5 million in expenses, and you can see what portion of that is coming from donations and grants and what is coming from general fund. And if you look at line 17, you're right on target in total. So even though some lines are above and some below due to timing, you're right on target with what you've budgeted. Any questions or comments on this?
This is, I know we talked about this last month. I think this is super helpful. I really
Okay.
appreciate it. It's great to kind of be able to see everything in one place.
And it's in summary form, so you don't get lost in all the detailed lines, but you can see exactly what the district is spending per category. So if anyone has recommendations on other categories or anything, I try to mirror it to the detailed report.
Yeah, I think it's great.
All right, the next page is our building projects. Now this includes both the use of grant and bond proceeds. It's not cumulative, so it's just showing this year what's been received in revenue, which is all interest. And then the expenses, which means on line 10, it's netting to the use of $373,000 of the proceeds that had already been received for bonds and grants. So this is a summary page. And if you move to the next page, you can see it in a little more detail by categories. This one's cumulative. You can see when the bonds were received, when the grant proceeds were received, how much has been funded from general fund, that $28,000 that we talked about for legal. You can see how much interest has been earned to date, and then the categories of expenses. So in the last column, you'll note that at the end, our building project balance is $25.6 million, almost 22 of that in bond proceeds, and nearly 4 of that in grant proceeds. And then I did also add the footnote because the grant could potentially be awarded up to the $7.6 million, just depending on what the district is able to spend, how much of that they can spend. Any questions on those reports? Okay, we'll go to the balance sheet. And the balance sheet is showing assets of 36.3, almost 4 million. Most of that, again, in bond proceeds. You can see the 22 million in bond proceeds. You can see 7.6 of that invested with class. Then some of the smaller assets, property tax receivable, still 2.3 to be received, which the biggest payout, the next large payout will come in April. And then your long-term assets, we've got fixed assets, and as we talked about last time, you've got it split between your deferred outflows and your inflows, which all has to do with your pension, how much you're using of existing resources and how much is still yet to be received and paid out toward that. Liabilities, minor liabilities, except for the deferred revenue, which is the unspent portion of the current grant that you have for the building project. And some of the other entries that we do not make until year end, having to do with the pension, your vacation, and of course, your bond payable. The district is making regular payments twice a year on the debt service for that. So that balance remains at 23.6. Any questions on your balance sheet? Okay, the last 2 pages were, I pointed out some of the highlights, but it's the narrative regarding all the lines. That's all I have, unless anyone has any other questions. Okay.
Wait,
One
I do have
minute.
one question. I guess
Okay.
my question, and maybe this is more an Ashley question than a question for you, is just on the materials spending, like, can you just like talk about that a little bit? Do you feel like we're,
I'm going to,
Are we talking specifically about the van? Or just in general?
I guess kind of 2 questions. Yeah, one about the van, which I understand is happening later, and then the other is just the general, like, the total programs and materials number seems to be low, and I was curious if that's because of a timing issue or.
which, number?
So on, so like on the general fund line item, so like library of things looks a little low, it's at like 45%. The mobile library collection, I understand is what it is. Audio CDs are low, right? And I guess my question is like, is that because those just haven't happened yet, or because we're moving stuff around to other categories, or?
There have been some adjustments made.
Yeah.
Like usually when we get to this time of year, staff can do a budget reallocation request where they can move funds around. And I know lately I've been approving at least 3 of those a week. People are moving money around to spend on different things.
Yeah,
Library of Things, I'm not exactly sure why the number is low, but I know that they have plans, like a list of things to buy.
yeah,
So it's probably just a matter of actually hitting go on some of that. So I think it'll be spent by the end of the fiscal.
okay,
I could speak further to that. Generally, Library of Things, I was serving on that committee before. They kind of create and compile a list, review that list, and then do spend throughout the year, but the majority of the spending tends to happen toward the end of the fiscal year. That's just how they have operated in the past, so that's why they're generally a little bit underspent at this point. And the audio CDs, I know we are, a lot of times for the children's have the majority of the budget for the audio CDs, and it's technically they purchase a material called Vox Books, which is like a kind of interactive book that has kind of like the old school buttons on it, but just like a newer updated version of that, so it can play along. And they also tend to wait and purchase in bulk toward the end of the fiscal year. So if you were to look at the previous fiscal year, I remember them putting in a large audio order at the end of the fiscal year. You'd see the same trend last year as this year. So those specific categories generally do trend toward the end, and they do spend it. Those materials are a little bit more expensive because of the nature of them, so they try and do it in one batch order toward the end of the fiscal year. So I'm assuming we should see it probably, if not this month, next month is normally when they would spend that.
oh, that's super helpful, thank you.
Make one more comment and then I'll leave, if that's okay. Just that the budget will be presented. It's going to budget committee. I think it's next week or the following, and then it will come to the board after that. Nikki and I and staff, we've all been working together on the budget. It's pretty tight, but you will be seeing that in the upcoming meeting. And that's it. Have a good night.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Have a good night. Alrighty. And we will move to the Board of Trustees Standing Committee reports. We have the CFD committee.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We had a meeting, in Terry's absence on April 10th. It was attended by our citizen community member, Doug Cauliflower, and then Chair Terry Andrews. The main focus of the conversation was not only to go over the financials, which you guys have already seen as well, but to talk about the bond proceeds and their investing. So originally when we got, the 23 million, put it in the bank with US Bank as our trust bank. We set a drawdown schedule because if you invested the money in treasury bonds, you had to set the amount of time and we had to make sure that the money became liquid as we needed it. Well, as you are aware, we were delayed by at least a year because of the permitting process. So a lot of that money became liquid and didn't get reinvested. So we discovered this kind of at the end of last year, and had a conversation with, US Bank. And then also looped in Doug Anderson, our municipal advisor, who, encouraged us to reinvest it because again, we're not gonna spend most of the money until at least next year, if not longer. So as you can see on page 49, we moved just over 16 million to First American Government Obligations Fund, where it's making almost 5% right now. And from what I understand, and I haven't read this report again lately, this is the report that came straight out of the CFD committee package. That is actually liquid. So it's not even like we had to set up a drawdown schedule. It's sitting there and we can pull it as needed. We do still have almost 6 million in US Treasury notes, but again, that was with the plan that they'll come to maturity over time. So I would assume that as those become liquid again, we'll also put those with the rest of the money that's with First American. So it's gaining as much interest as possible in this next year. I can't explain it. Trustee probably could have if she was still in here, but like, there's only so much interest we can make once we hit the 3-year mark with the bonds. The 3-year mark will be next February, 2025. So we're gonna have to pay closer attention to how much we're making, based on, because like we can't make more in interest than the rate of the debt service or something to that effect. But this is on our radar. We're planning to meet with Doug probably ahead of all the quarterly meetings of the CFD committee, just to make sure that we're still investing wisely, the money is liquid as needed, but also making us as much money as it can. So hopefully that provides some information about the CFD committee.
Can I ask a dumb question?
No, you may ask.
Hopefully I can answer.
Maybe I'm just not understanding what's in the report. So why do we have 6 million in treasury notes if they're gonna net out so much less in interest?
When we invested them, that was like, we agreed like the best bet. We only had certain options of where we could put it.
Oh,
And
okay.
all of them went in, like whatever amount it was that we invested at the time,
Mm-hmm.
but with certain amounts that would draw down to become liquid as we needed it.
Okay,
So there's still some that are making that percentage of interest that we can't have it come to maturity yet.
so we have to just wait till they're,
Yeah,
till
so
they-
once they
Yeah.
mature,
yeah.
then, oh, Christy, you're still here. Oh my gosh.
I am, you said it perfectly, Nikki. I just wanted to make sure I was gonna stay on and listen, but you're exactly right with what you said. Where it's funded, we've got to wait till maturity.
And we will move them to make more interest as soon as we can.
Right.
Got it, okay.
The magic date I'll just mention is March of 25, when you hit the 3-year mark, and that is when we have to really start looking at the calculations for earnings. So if the market stays where it's at and you can continue to earn up until that time, we may have to scale back then to make sure you're not earning more than the yield. But for the next
And
year, you're good to go.
Can you explain the rule on that? So we're not allowed to earn more interest than
Then the
what?
bond would yield itself. And the bond yield, I believe, is somewhere around the 2.65. I feel like it was mentioned in this report. Somewhere about 2.65 is what the bonds themselves would yield. And so if what they're saying is if you go out and make more money, you technically owe it back to the bondholders. So what they're saying is you can't get this money. You can't go and get a bond, go for your to use it on your capital projects and then really on the side make all this investment earnings. If you make too much, they're going to ask for it back. So they do a calculation. And then if you do, sometimes you have to pay something back. But I think we're going to try to monitor it so that is pretty minimal. But yeah, they just want to make sure that you're not using this money to make money.
Right, okay, right. that makes sense. Is that rule for the entire 30-year life of the bond? Or is like, how do you count that? You know what I mean? Is it like, why can we make more money on it now, but we can't in 3 years? Like, what is that?
That's a great question. It's 3 years it's 3 years is the amount of time that they give you. And part of that is because when you issued the bonds, you said the project would be done in 3 years.
Right.
So that's why they're like, okay, for that period of time, that's great. But now that your project's been delayed, you don't get to just use that and make money. If you do, you can, but it's got to go back to somebody else. It doesn't get to go to the district to use for the project. It's called an arbitrage calculation. I'm no expert. There is an expert on the team. So when we started looking into this and we realized, Nikki and I realized, okay, bonds, T-notes have been maturing, and now all of a sudden interest rates are up. Let's get those invested. That's when we brought Doug in and said, wait a minute, look at this. Let's get some more money going. I immediately went to our expert and said, okay, let me make sure I understand the arbitrage. We can make money now, right? But not later. So yeah, it's a calculation that basically your building project originally was 3 years. That's what you get. After that, you can still make money, but it's got to be in line with the bond yield.
Right. Got it. Okay. Fair enough.
And once you start spending, I mean, you're not going to have that money for 30 years. What's happening?
No,
I mean, you know what I
understand.
mean? You're talking until the project's done, which is going to be in the next 5 years or maybe sooner. After that, what you're hoping or planning on is that each year's tax assessment is enough to make your debt service payments, both interest and principal. And there's not one in this financial report. We'll do it probably every other month to keep that updated. It doesn't change often, but that's where we show you what's being collected. And we're watching that very closely to make sure with delinquencies that there's enough funding to make those payments in September and in March. And there was. We made the payment in March. We're good. So now we're collecting to make up for that payment in September. And those aren't around. The taxes come in, we pay it. So the district doesn't have much time to even earn anything on those collections.
Right. Right. Okay. Perfect. Yep.
I'm glad I got it right.
Yeah, no, you're right on, Nikki. I'm interested. So I was just sticking around for the next couple topics, but I'll go away again. Thank you.
Alrighty. If there are no further questions, we can move to our Board of Trustees ad hoc committee reports, beginning with the Facilities Committee.
Just to say that the groundbreaking last week was awesome, and thank you so much to the staff for working so hard to put together a really incredible day, and it was great to see so many folks there and a full tent, so that was excellent. Everything else in the report is pretty self-explanatory, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
No, just ditto. I mean, yeah, I wasn't expecting so much. So this, yeah, like the staff did an amazing job. And the turnout, I mean, you had family members fly in from like Chicago, I believe, the Lucas family, so it was
Right.
a pretty great event.
And one of his family members that just turned 100.
Yeah.
They came?
Yeah, she
Yeah.
came.
Wow.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, they were very pleased.
It
Okay.
was great to have them all there.
I'm glad that it was a good event.
Yeah.
Okay, elections ad hoc committee. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much more to say other than what's in the report. I mean, we're just gonna keep doing what we can to make sure people are aware that the elections are coming up, district-based. So you can see just some of the things we're thinking about. So, you know, social media, we're gonna reach out to folks who've either been candidates or have applied to be appointed in the past. And then also trying to connect with town council members whose districts overlap, see if they know of any leaders in their immediate community that they can try and reach out to as well.
I will say, again, that anytime someone asks me about the library, I've been mentioning, where do you live? You know, we have an election coming up. So I think it's another good way to put the word out there. It's just, you know,
Yeah.
talking to people on the baseball field. That have noticed, you know, that I'm associated with the library. So I'm doing some work.
Yeah.
Trying to get us some people.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. I did not see, is there a liaison report? Terry did not, and Terry's not here. Okay. And we shall move on to unfinished business, which we do not have any of, so let's go on to new business. First item is review and approval of the updated record retention policy.
So I'll go ahead and speak on that. So myself, Nikki, and David were working with Klein to take a look at the 2019 record retention policy. That's when it was last taken a look at, I believe by BBK.
Yeah,
Yeah.
BK and the board. Mhm.
So basically the goal here was number one, to make sure that we're in compliance with the current record retention policies and laws, which include a slew, as you can see in the background information there. It's federal, labor, elections, revenue and taxation, all of this stuff. And then also to kind of streamline it, because the one that we did have it was all alphabetical. But it didn't have like section headers, like the current one that, the proposed update, has like administration, human resources, it kind of like streamlines it a little. And if it looks a lot less, don't be alarmed. Really, that, consolidation is really just overlapping retention dates, where it's not really necessary for us to have a line for each and every single thing, especially as it applies to us as the district itself. There's certain things that we don't necessarily like, that does not necessarily apply to us, and if it does, not very often. So hopefully this is just something easier for all of our staff to use. This was especially like kind of at the top of our minds because we're going through all of our records to, you know, get rid of things that we have paper documents of as we get ready to close down Maine next year. So this is going to be really helpful in getting us to do that. Another really big thing, which wasn't in the report, and I apologize. Olivia, who from Chronic, she also wrote up an actual policy to go with the retention record itself, which we didn't have before. So there's kind of like guidelines to follow before you actually look at the actual retention, you know, guidelines. So that's really all I have to say about that. But if anybody has any questions.
Definitely like the gridded format. It's just very
Yeah.
easy to follow.
This seems much less insane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was such a hard schedule to follow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd be flipping and like, I'd be downstairs, like when I was going through files downstairs, like flipping through pages, and I had a bunch of like highlights and Post-its on pages so I could refer to them. This one is so much easier to look at. So.
Yeah. No, this is much better. I will say, I remember when we did this originally in 2019, like also there was nothing.
There was nothing.
So like, it was better than the like, who knows?
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you guys did makes so much more sense.
No other questions or comments? All right, then may I get a motion for approval of the updated record retention policy?
Yeah, so moved.
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Okay,
Much better.
all right, next item we have is review and approval of the updated staff accountant job description.
So I'll just stick to that. So we brought the board a job description back in September of 2022 called staff accountant. Prior to hiring a staff accountant, we tried to fill the position as an office manager that had sprinklings of HR, benefits administration with finance. Took us about 6 months to fill that position, and that ended up not really working out. At that point, we decided to outsource a lot of financial work and bring on a part-time staff accountant that could come in 2 days a week, help cut checks, do bookkeeping and accounting for us, help maintain the physical files. And overall, I think that worked well. We cleaned up a lot of the processes, made sure that, all the bills were getting paid in a timely manner. There was, you know, the levels of oversight that are needed to be able to pay the bills accurately and make sure that they're, being paid for the services provided. As you are all aware, the building projects keep ramping up. We have the bond proceeds with our trust bank, to pay those bills that are related to building projects. We have to fill out this requisition form, a mailing sheet, as well as provide the invoice, and they cut the checks to pay those bills. I believe to this time, at this point, we've already submitted over 100 requisitions, and we haven't even technically started the construction yet. So we know that there's gonna be a lot more work, just paying bills. On top of that, with us creating all these new funds and ways of accounting, the job has just gotten a lot more complicated and time consuming. We've also found that there could be a delay sometimes in trying to get things done when, you know, like Christie and I Bailey are trying to like reconcile reports, work on the credit card statements and all of that, that if we didn't have someone here 5 days a week, it could sometimes slow things down. So, we looked at the job description. We did make some red line changes, as you can see. Largely, those were to move away from just assisting with tasks, but to have oversight of some of them in that role. This is an exempt position. It's paid at the management level. So it would be my goal, to post the position and hire for a full-time person, that can then take some of the work off of Bailey's hands as well. And also have somebody here 5 days a week. There's a lot going on between programming and cutting checks and paying bills. And so long story short, we just really need someone here full time. And we thought like, as we're building the budget for next year, we wanted to make sure that we built that fiscal impact into the budget. As you can see, it would be about 68,000 to pay someone to be here 40 hours a week, as well as benefits and other things. As I mentioned, in talking with Bailey, the goal long-term would be to spend less with them. So it wouldn't be as big of a fiscal impact at that point. But again, that's assuming that we post it and can hire, a new staff accountant to do all these things. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or discussion?
I've just got a quick question.
Sure.
So the fiscal impact of 68, that's like additional, right? Cause it's not that we'd be hiring somebody at that rate, it would be
Correct.
whatever we're paying now plus.
Correct.
Great, okay, that makes me
Yeah.
feel a lot better about our likelihood of getting somebody to do
Yes,
this job.
yes.
It's just low.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
No,
but that's
no.
everything.
Yeah, and the position starts, the salary schedule, I think the low is 86,000 a year.
For that step, is
Right.
step one is 80?
Yes,
Okay,
is 86,000.
great,
I have had conversations with Christie, you know, what do accountants make in the accounting world? And she feels confidently that we should be able to hire someone at that salary
Okay.
range. But yeah, right now we have she's working like 16 to 20 hours a week. So that would be the difference.
sure, got it,
With benefits and everything too.
okay, perfect.
No questions?
Questions?
Nope.
Okay. Alrighty then, can I get a motion for the approval of the updated staff accountant job description?
So moved.
Second,
All in favor? Okay. Great, thank you.
promote that on LinkedIn.
Okay. Then lastly, we have the summer internships recruitment, which is an informational item.
Actually, with the last word.
Right, so, last summer, we recruited interns for various departments, including public services, facilities, marketing, IT, and technical services. Of that recruitment, we were able to hire 2 interns. One was in public services, the other was in facilities. And we also were able to permanently hire one of the interns. He is currently a library aide for us. And they worked on a variety of projects throughout the summer, which is really our busiest time of the year. So we're hoping to open that recruitment again and hopefully get 2 new interns in any one of those departments they wish to help us out in and gain some new experiences. So, hopefully we'll have them in place by the start of summer. And then furthermore, through the grant that we're getting for lunch at the library from the California State Library, we received funding to hire 2 teen interns. So we are posting to recruit those as well. And we will be having a combination of meals, enrichment opportunities, as well as an afternoon snack. So it's a lot of moving pieces to summer lunch. So 2 interns would be really supportive to the team if we can get those in. We are working closely with Ben because we know teens probably don't browse our employment page on our website. So they are actively recruiting. They created a flyer that they will take out to outreach events and share with their contacts so that we can pull in a really good pool of teens. The fiscal impact is broken down in the report, but basically it's $5,100 for the course of the 10-week time that they will spend with us. And this is for our interns, because as I've stated, the teen ones are supported through the grant. And we have already included the $5,100 in the 2024-2025 budget. So we're all set to go. So hopefully we'll be bringing 4 new people onto our team for this summer. So that's exciting. Any questions?
I'm assuming that the teens get paid at the same $17 an hour rate as the adults, or?
They do not.
Oh, okay.
So for teens, we were instructed through the grant to look up what minimum wage was. And it was saying 16 when we looked it up. So they are getting 16 and we just paid the regular interns what we did last year, which was $17 an hour. So it's $1 difference.
Okay.
We could probably talk about that.
Okay.
Could we pay him $17?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like, we have $1 for sure.
Well, the teen ones are not covered through us.
No, I know, but I'm saying, like, if
But
we
yeah,
have
I
to
think we can
supplement
make
the,
it work, yeah.
yeah.
As long as the grant doesn't forbid it.
Yeah, as long as we're not explicitly prohibited from doing it, it'd be nice if we could fund them at the same rate.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's great though. I mean, last year seemed like it was a pretty resounding success, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we hired him.
Yeah, exactly. 50% retention.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where like building this pipeline, you know, people that can get some experience working here, see if they'd be interested. I mean, time and time again, I'm sure you can talk to people at PLA that like, people just happen to get a job at the library and ended up loving it and sticking with it,
Yeah.
so.
That's right.
Plus, to Ashley's point earlier is getting people in the door to think about it as a career that maybe otherwise wouldn't,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, that's right. Especially early.
Yeah, I was talking to one of our employees who's about to graduate from UCLA's MLS program. And I said, are there a lot of students that don't work at the library? And she said, oh yeah, a lot. And it like blows my mind kind of that they've never worked at the library and they go all the way through their master's program.
Yeah, yeah.
Cause like, I don't know that the coursework really demonstrates what it's like to work at the public library. So.
I mean, so a lot of them end up going just straight into research and never dealing with libraries at all, right?
Some, I'm sure.
Well, some people go to academic libraries,
Mhm.
and special
Different
different
things,
stuff,
yeah.
archival work.
But yeah, I think, public librarians, it can be a little bit of a rude awakening. You're not just like sitting in a room reading books. Not that maybe that's what they think, but you never know, you know?
Yeah.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Governance, we'll move on to governance, which we don't have anything on the agenda. So we'll move on to announcements and planning. Is there any correspondence?
Just did want to announce, we are having our volunteer appreciation, night this Friday. So I know we have one trustee who's actually 2 trustees who are going to be there. But the friends are gonna be there, the foundation, our team volunteers, our adult volunteers, so we have, and literacy as well, so we have a good group that's gonna be there that evening, and I'm sure we'll share out all the fun happenings from that, so just.
That's great.
We finally get to have one.
Yeah.
This is the first one since the pandemic.
Wow.
Looking forward to it. Okay, any proposed future agenda items?
Nope.
All right, then, can I get a motion to adjourn at 7:03 PM?
So moved.
All righty, we are adjourned at 7:04.